This August, our worship theme has been home and belonging, and we have been talking about what it means for a place to be a home. We've been talking about our Unitarian Universalist vision of a truly inclusive community, and we've been talking about the practice of welcoming and what it means to welcome people into a space wholeheartedly and to allow it to become a home to them. Today we're going to talk about a broader issue. We're going to talk about how home and belonging functions in a community and in our community, and specifically we're going to be talking about gentrification. So I'm very excited to have special guests from the Kheprw Institute to join us. They gave a presentation, a whole long series on gentrification during Spirit in Place last year, and they're going to share some of their insights with us. And after the presentation, we should have 5 minutes or so for Q&A if there are any questions, and I'll grab a mic so that I can bring it to anyone who has a question. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome up Imhotep Adisa and Alvin and Alex Sangsuwangul from the Kheprw Institute. Thank you.
My name is Alvin. My name's Alvin, and I just want to start by thanking you for having us here today. So I just want to start by building off of Jamie's story, which, of course, is not just for the children, but for all of us. And I think one piece that is impactful about it is that it shows that there are different realities that people live in. The wolf in a very material reality and a very individualistic reality, whereas the other animals in a reality that is more about community, about relationships, where those things are central, the property and the idea of what can I have and what can I get to better my life. So I think that, gentrification is, it's a hot topic issue. It's an issue that impacts people's lives in a real way here in Indianapolis, but across the country and across the world. So it's a good way to understand how these different realities, when people live in different realities, how it causes collision, suffering, and it just helps to illuminate the tip of the iceberg, one of the many challenges that those different realities creates. So and I think it's illustrated in countless ways. I don't want to talk too much specifically about gentrification because I think it's a broader issue, but we had we spent last year having monthly discussions about various aspects of gentrification, as well as this year doing book discussions and an author speaker series. One of the books that we read recently was How to Kill a City, which is a good illustration of just, for me, the value was seeing the deeper history of that gentrification isn't just people being displaced from urban communities, but a history of prioritizing the needs of particularly white middle-class families who then created the suburbs. There's a couple good resources. This is one where he basically defines gentrification not just as displacement, but turning cities into places that produce profit for those who can purchase and develop those places. And that part of that cycle is disinvestment in other communities. So it's, check it out, How to Kill a City by Peter Moskowitz. There's also a great NPR interview with another author who wrote a book called The Color of Law. And he talks about basically the government-led efforts that led to greater segregation in the 1920s and 30s from the Federal Housing Administration, and the making available of mortgages just to white families. So that's another good source. But back to the clash of realities, I think it's, at this time, we are faced with such an obvious that our realities are broken, whether it's the events of Charlottesville or the events that we see every week that happen. And really, I think it's an opportunity to embrace that discomfort and to embrace the shattering of reality that wasn't really, that may have seemed real, but really was based on what we valued, which was much more individualistic, much more about property, and that left many communities out. So I think the first step in the idea of community and belonging is first to let go of that need for that community and belonging, to be uncomfortable in something that seems foreign or seems outside of our experiences, to learn from those experiences, educate ourselves, whether it's through books, through conversations with others. At the Kheprw Institute, we try and create those spaces, and of course this is trying to create the space to have those difficult, honest dialogues about issues that we all face and that we're all challenged with. So that's, I think that's a good starting point, and I think I will go ahead and pass it. And you're all welcome. I'm going to pass out cards for our organization. We have events probably 5 or 6 a month, and we'd love to have you attend sometime. So, thank you.
Good morning, and thanks for having us back. I think this is my 3rd, maybe 4th time having the opportunity to come and share and learn and discuss about things that are, really important to community. On the gentrification question that Alvin's kind of touched on, and as a scholar, listed some references for us all to go and read and study in our spare time. I live at 25th and Boulevard. I've lived there for 30 years. And it was a choice that my wife and I made. It was not an economic choice. We could have moved out to the suburbs and lived somewhere else. And we chose to stay there. So over the course of that period, and when we moved in, we were also viewed as outsiders by other African Americans who lived in the neighborhood. So the idea of gentrification is often grounded in fear, and having strangers move into your neighborhood, folks you don't know, don't look like you, don't dress like you, don't like to do the same things for fun. So I get that. A recent personal story as it relates to potential gentrification of a neighborhood is sitting on the front porch the other day, and it was a car that parked, and there's a guy there, and he had a camera, but he didn't want to get out of the car until I left. So, weren't you driving today, Alvin? And so Alvin was driving, so I said, Alvin, drive up to the corner and go around the corner and come back. So he drove the corner, turned around the corner and came back, and he was out taking pictures of our house. And so I stopped him and said, what are you doing? He said, I'm just taking pictures of neighborhood houses. I said, well, I live here. He said, you do? I said, yeah. I said, I own that house. I said, you do? I said, yeah. He said, well, I'm just taking pictures. Other folks are looking to buy properties in the area. So I was messing with him a little bit. So I said, oh, okay. I own that house there. I own that house over there also. So we own the corner, basically, which was one of the reasons my other neighbors back when I was young had a fit. They thought we were buying up the neighborhood. And, at that time we didn't have children, so we had surplus cash, and we thought, well, we buy properties and we were going to use them for some of the work that we do now in Kheprw, which is really fundamentally what we do. It was also a way, one of our neighbors, the house, it was in probate court. She was a school teacher. She had died. The family had the house, and they turned it over to a realtor-type renter person to rent it out, and we had some neighbors. So one of the last neighbor threw a bunch of Pampers out in the backyard, just tossed them out in the backyard. So we said, okay, let's call and find out who owns this house. We did, and we found out that the house was available. So we bought it, like $7,000, bought the house, cash. And at that point, my other neighbor said, these guys are trying to take over the neighborhood. But in reality, we were trying to protect the neighborhood and have some control over, who lives next door to us, and particularly from folks who were just trying to make money. But be that as it may, so this photographer gets out, and he said, you own all these? I said, yeah, I own all these houses. He said, oh, okay. I said, why don't you pass my number on to your boss? Because he was just working for these guys. Can I take pictures of the house? I said, yeah, feel free. Now, I didn't tell him I had this big black dog on the side of the house. So he goes on the side of the house in Mars, who was really harmless other than bark. Oh, man, that guy ran for his car. So I tell that story to say that that's the anxiety that's growing in these communities, particularly communities ripe for gentrification. And there's a large number of elders who live in these spaces that are just scared to death that their properties are going to be taken. So that's just a personal story around the anxiety that's building around it. And then so when folks move into the neighborhood, often with good intentions, don't look like us, and particularly in race-based communities, when white folks move in, okay, gentry's on its way. And it might very well be a component of it. But the folks who are moving in don't necessarily have bad intentions. So I want to start with that, and that's always a challenge in community, having those kinds of conversations that say that what you're looking at is not always rooted in what is. So for me, gentrification is a subset. It's a symptom of a bigger issue. And that issue is really just capital, market-based capital, and how money moves around to make more money. So the better we as communities understand the driving economic forces behind this thing we're currently calling gentrification, which is actually leads also to increased poverty in communities. I think the better opportunity we'll have to figure out how to work together and not get caught up in the newness, the breweries, the coffee shops, all these things that come with displacement, both cultural and physical displacement. So that's pretty much all I want to really say about gentrification, with one other caveat along that lines. We were on the phone just a couple of days ago with this group out of Oakland. It's a think tank, Policy Link. It's founded by a black woman many years ago, but they do policy-related issues, and equity is one of them. So we were talking with them about how we could do some more work together, and she very carefully mentioned, they were she'd come in from Oakland to visit with a local economic development company that will go unnamed right now. And she wanted to let us know that they've been working with that group. And you could tell she had some history around maybe our relationship with this group as we've challenged some of the economic development issues taking place in our community, particularly at Targeting Park. That's been a real spirited, debated concern about displacement in community. And so this economic development company had taken them on the tour, attempting to convince them that, everything's on the wall and this is going to be best for the community. Well, ironically, she has a cousin that lives in the neighborhood. So she called her cousin, oh yeah, they're trying to gentrify and take my property. So that's the level of anxiety that's existing in those spaces. And so, anyway, so that's the gentrification piece. But I don't want to talk anymore about gentrification. I do think Richard Florida's book, you didn't mention that one, did you? I do think Richard Florida's book, The New Urban Crisis, is a really must read, because it talks about this phenomenon at the global level and what's happening globally with people moving into cities at really huge rates, and how that's impacting these particular issues, with gentrification just really being one symptom of that. There's so much I could say. I'm just going to say two more things, and then I'll pass the mic. The bigger issue for me is how we have unfortunately created and support a particular way of living that's is no longer human-centered. It's no longer about people and community. And some of that's just grounded in profit. And even communities are no longer communities. You don't know your neighbors. Some folks live in high rise. You don't even know the person next door. You couldn't go borrow a cup of sugar if you wanted to. So we've created this society now that's just disconnected us from other people in our communities. And some of that has been designed around just selling us more stuff. You know, and in order to feel good, used to be you rush out to the mall and bought something new and you felt good for 3 or 4 days, and you had to go back next week when you got your next check and buy something else to feel good. But not leaning on, hey, I did something for Alvin today that made him smile. That's priceless. There's no price you can put on that. It's forever. So if we can figure out how to regain some of that piece of our spirit and our soul, we'll gain our world back. I don't know how we're going to do it, and I wish I could tell you. Particularly now, you can just get on your phone and Amazon to drop your latest interest in feeling good to your door without you getting off your porch. So I think that's our biggest challenge as a community. And I also don't think it has to necessarily be neighborhood-based. It can be philosophically based, connecting with others that believe this is not the world we want. We want a different kind of world. So I would be remiss if I don't talk a little bit about Virginia and P45, better known as President Trump, and the particular place we find ourselves in this country. Was it last Sunday when everybody came to the staff meeting, doubled in size? Yeah. So we had, every Sunday afternoon, we have what we call our staff meeting, which is a group of intergenerational members of our team, interracial, I mean, just you name it is present. And the age ranges from 14 to 74, black and white. And so after Virginia and the very visible rise of the alt-right and the tragedy that took place there, has got us all like, what is going on in the United States of America? Young folks had all this anxiety all week long in our space. So we said, okay, we have to we got to change the agenda and give our space a place to let that kind of anxiety and fear, and as elders, do the best we can to comfort young adults in that, you know, we can get through this. And it really, it came home to me when one of the young ladies that works with us, she's Jewish, and her relatives drove up from her hometown, and they went and had dinner, came in late, and you could just feel the anxiety that was just on her spirit. She broke down, started crying at Wednesday, just out of nowhere. So that's what led to, okay, we got to intervene in this conversation. And so our staff meeting doubled. It went from 9 to 18. And, 12 to 18. With other young people who just have this fear and anxiety, mostly African Americans, about what's happening in this country and are we safe. So I share that to say that as we look at what's happening and we're in disbelief about it, reality is that we're at a very, very critical moment again in the history of this country, particularly about not just your racial attitudes. You know, most of the reason why we're at this space is because we've held on to our racial attitudes. We just learned how to be civil with each other and live in separate places and eat in different places and go to different schools and ignore the ongoing history of inequity and race in America. And now that the country is, so this thing with the right and P45 is not new. It has never gone away. The history of America is grounded in this reality. And so it just finds itself back in a place to rise up again. And the truth of the matter, this is our failure. This is our failure. Why we're back here again. So I challenge everyone to learn more, do more research, not just on Gentry, but on the issue of race in America, the true story of race in America, and be looking at having conversations like these with others, painful, difficult conversations, to figure out how we can create a world that's safer and more equitable. And that would be my challenge. I got to go home with this. I love the pig story, by the way. I may steal that. So I hope it's open source. But what I am struggling with is the wolf, because for me, it's a vampire. And vampires will tell you that, oh, we're not going to suck any more blood. I'll sign here. But the vampire at its source has no other alternative but to suck blood. So I'm hoping you're right. I'm going to take that story and look at it, and I hope that the wolf can redeem itself and find ways for us to move forward. So can I have that story? All right, okay. All right, thank you.
My name is Alex Hayden Sangsuwangul. First of all, I want to say thank you for the opportunity to be here and share this space with all of you, and an opportunity to share my story. Imhotep and Alvin spoke a little bit, I think I already covered gentrification, so I'll speak more to the topic of home and belonging as it relates to me. When I was young, my mom used to always tell me, you know how when you try to lie to your mom, she knows? She always knows. So I used to, I don't know why I didn't want to brush my teeth when I was a kid. So in the evening time before bed, she would look at me, she's like, Alex, did you brush your teeth? I would say, yeah, Mom. And she would see me smiling, and I would practice too. I'd be like, keep a straight face so I can lie. Yes, I brushed my teeth, Mom. And she would look me right in the eye, and she would say, Alex, the truth will set you free. And then I would always feel guilty. I'm like, okay, Mom, I didn't brush my teeth. I would go brush my teeth. And I feel very welcome in this place because of the introduction. Thank you very much. Right? We welcome everybody, whether you believe in God or this God or all gods. I think that's so important to develop that compassion for all beings. And I saw the banner at the front. I believe, who made the banners again? Can you raise your hand? Oh, she's teaching. Well, I send gratitude to her because I saw one that says, search for truth. And I really resonate with that. Because as I grew older, I started to process what my mother was telling me. The truth shall set you free. The truth shall set you free. So began this journey of questioning a lot of these critical questions, these uncomfortable questions that we don't like to look at. Why don't I feel at home in my house? Why don't I feel at home in my community? Why don't I feel at home, even at times, in my own family? It's hard to deal with. What about my ancestry? Maybe they'll help me. I'll look towards the elders. But the problem is we don't have very many elders anymore. We just have olders. People that are older that don't really have any answers to the questions that I'm asking. So where do I go? Who can answer my questions? I don't know. So I'll just keep asking the questions and wait for an answer. Why is it that I don't feel at home? Why is it that most of us have a sense that the way we live is unsustainable? Why is it that we all have a knowledge that the earth is suffering, our entire ecology, and we know that? I think everybody has a sense of that. Why aren't we doing anything different? What about some of the really uncomfortable ones? And please have compassion and open mind for me, because this is just my personal questioning. As I look back at my ancestry, my mother, who is white, an ancestry of oppression for 500 years, slavery, that's my ancestry. Oppression, greed, Donald Trump. Donald Trump is within me. That's an uncomfortable truth. Donald Trump is within all of us. That potential for greed. What about my home? It's home sweet home. What about the people that died to allow it to be heated? What about the blood oil that allows me to drive my car from place to place, wherever I want to go? You see, maybe I didn't directly crack the whip, but I do enjoy all the comforts of compromise. Uncomfortable truths. What about this church? Is it powered by the blood oil from a foreign land? Ooh, that's uncomfortable. And I apologize. However, I feel it's important to be aware and remember these things and be able to say sorry. It's very simple. I'm sorry. But again, I don't really feel it. Maybe I have to think about, who am I apologizing to? I'm sorry to all those people that died in Syria for me to have oil, or all the people that died in Iraq for me to have my gas. Ooh, now it hits home. Now I'm starting to feel it in my heart, that grief. It's painful instantly. Gotta breathe, gotta relax, because that anger can turn to hate very quickly. And if we don't deal with it, it can turn to things like Charlottesville and hate, right? My view, your truth is different from my truth, so listen to my truth. If you don't agree with my truth, well, maybe we just won't hang out, but maybe next time, if you try to put your truth on my truth, maybe I'll kill you. Sad truth that we're facing in the present. So how do we deal with it? Well, I think it's important that we explore these feelings. So I'm feeling this anger and grief within me right now in my heart. So I have to authentically say, I am sorry. We are sorry. We are sorry. Please forgive us. And please allow forgiveness to my ancestry that did oppress. And by embracing Donald Trump, embracing the greed, embracing the slavery, embracing all of that, we can forgive and become back to the present and heal. And say thank you to my neighbor. Right? Thank you to the person who's sitting to my left and to my right. And start to love again. And let that be the driving force of my actions. Love. But we have to say sorry and forgive first. Then we can give gratitude and love. Belonging for me, we have to look at, we've spoken a lot about belonging to humanity and the people around us, but what about the trees? What about the birds and the bees and the grass and the ground and the soil and the place that we live? What about the other living beings? Not very many people speak up for them, especially in our current situation amidst the sixth extinction. I don't know if you guys have heard of the sixth extinction. It's happening right now. Species are disappearing at a rate never seen before. That seems like frontline news, but I don't hear it in the media. Who's going to speak up for them? We have to remember we belong to this earth. That is our home. That's where we belong, is the earth, our common home. Beautiful common home. So the other living beings are just as important. as human beings. Because without the other living beings, human beings cannot survive. So we have to look at mass genocide of other living beings that's happening right now. Nobody talks about that either. A cornfield has killed all the land, take out all the trees, all the animals, birds, and bees that were living in that place, and plant corn. And fertilize it with chemical fertilizers. Rape the land, rape the soil. Spray it with pesticides so the insects won't eat it. And then those pesticides end up coming into us, toxicity. And again, if we stay there, it's all toxic. Oh, there's that grief again. We are sorry. We are aware. Please forgive us. Again, just want to say thank you for this opportunity to share. And I just encourage being brave enough to go into those uncomfortable places, those uncomfortable feelings, and still have compassion for somebody who may not have the same truth as you, and listen and create understanding. Because that's how we find the truth. We listen to each other, and we create understanding with compassion and an open mind, with love. Thank you very much. I love each and every one of you.
I did promise time for questions. We have just a couple of minutes if anyone has a question they'd like to direct to our guests.
Can you explain a little bit more about the Institute?
Years ago. Skinny version, my son was not doing well in school. My wife was on the other side outraged, and we had to do an intervention. So out of self-interest, and I was working at the time at a rehab resource as a consultant. So he had to come to work that summer, and he had failed algebra. And both his parents are engineers, so it was somewhat of a community public embarrassment to have a child who couldn't pass freshman year algebra. So he lost his summer privileges. Paulette's grandson, co-founder, comes up from Florida. He joined us. A couple other young men wanted to join the program, so we ended up with a summer program that included academic enrichment, work, a little pay for the summer, and then in the summer said, hey, we want to continue. And that was pretty much how I was born. So fast forward to the present, about 4 years ago, some of those young men came back and said, we want to reinvest in the center, in the Institute, because you guys invested in us. And so it took another direction I call the intergenerational fight for leadership. Where young people want to do it a certain way, and the elders saying do it another way. So we found some ways to negotiate space and leadership. A turning point was actually when, and we were a very small, private organization just working on the development of young people in our community. Emphasis on what we call community empowerment through self-mastery. Creating agency, figuring out how to solve and address issues in your own community with the resources that you have available to you. So just about how to get things done with whatever's in front of you. And the social enterprise is the platform which we often use. So we started a variety of businesses over the years with nothing. And it was, okay, well, how do we do this? How do we sustain ourselves? We moved into the old 888 that was located at 28th and Capitol, and it had been there since 1957. It had been sitting empty for 2 years. So it was really our first very visible space when folks start coming in and say, what's going on in here? What are you guys doing? Can we use the internet? Can you help us with this? Can you help us with that? And so we started becoming more involved in activities that were taking place in our community. And then we got a phone call and an email from another initiative called the Quality of Life, where some institutional voices, let's just say they weren't necessarily happy with the absence of residents in the space and wanted Kheprw to become engaged in that tension with how to make sure that those who are not represented are involved. And Paulette, who's 74, comes out of the civil rights era, and she drug all of us into that fight. And whenever we decided we didn't want to participate, we got called all kinds of names at our staff meetings. And so we then finally would bow down to the matriarch and say, okay, we got to go over here and stay engaged. And that just blew up, just different places in the work that now has us involved with environmental work, the issues of the police. You name it, we're involved with it, and we've tried to honor that calling by making our space available to have critical conversations, still driven through youth development, young people being in charge of initiatives and things to learn how to lead with a focus on building community and their own self-development. So that's kind of a skinny of how we went from this small group of 5 African-American males to this organization that's every time you turn around, folks, depending on who you are, you see us differently. Some think we're an education organization. Some think we are an environmental organization. Some folks think we are an entrepreneur organization. But all of it is around youth development and creating young leaders that can help, make the world the kind of world we want. That was a great question.
Jeanette, I'm going to let you have the last question.
I remember when you were here and you were telling us about all the things that your organization did, and it was just so inspiring and enlightening. But I remember the hydroponics, and I don't know, is that still in existence?
Yes, the aquaponics operation was a project we launched, I think, 5 years ago. And Skinny Verse is a great example of what I was referring to. Diop and I were at a conference in New York. I think at the time he was a junior at IU. And there were some guys at this conference that were talking about aquaponics. And he said, man, we ought to go back to Indianapolis and build this aquaponics operation. Now, of course, I know he had no idea what he was talking about. This was some heavy stuff. I'm an engineer by background. So, but, I said, yeah, let's go back and do that. So we come back to Indianapolis. We put a 10-year-old in charge of the research. So he got all summer. His project was to learn about aquaponics. Now, Chin, he's the kind of kid that he's, on the other side of a nerd. He lives right around the corner, but he wants to let you know I'm the smartest kid in the room. So he goes in, puts the research together, comes back and presents the research to the group, and we said, okay, we're going to build one. And so we then started taking our crew to Chicago, where there was this thing called the plant, where they had this huge aquaponics operation. And that's how we began. It took us a year to put it together. And it was the largest aquaponics operation in the city at the time. And we had it behind this wall where you come into our space, a little small space, and you go and open up this door, and boom, there's this huge aquaponics operation. And we had put it up on some steps. They had to walk up the steps, so it just looked like something out of Star Trek or something. So everybody talked about it all around town. So the young people just really got excited about it. The community got excited. So at any rate, we built it. So if we had to take it down, we could. And we're talking about a lot of water. 3 250-gallon tanks and 3 250-gallon beds. So, because we didn't own the building. And you never know when you're going to be displaced. So we were, of course, displaced. And so we took it down, had a fish fry. The children cried because they had named all the fish. We told you guys not to give these fish any name, but anyway. So. And then Paulette made them kill each one of them, so so they got a real lesson in all of that. So the latest version of aquaponics, we have moved it into a garage in the Northwest community, where we also have an urban garden farming initiative. So we said we want, to be inside our space, we want to now in community. So now it's in this garage. Neighbors come by and they see it. They're watching. They see the food growing. We got another initiative over there. So yes, it still exists, and now we're trying to figure out how to make it more accessible to people in community who live there. And they too said, well, dang, if you guys could do this in your garage, we can do this in our garage. So that's the nature where it's at now.
So I just wanted to share a couple opportunities if people want to get more involved. I handed out some cards. I ran out. So if you're interested and you didn't get a card afterward, just come up to us and we'll put you on our email list, and that goes to everybody. So a couple of things that are coming up. One of the things that we've just launched in the last few months is called the Assemblies. So we have the Indianapolis Environmental Justice Assembly, the Equitable Development Assembly, and the Food Assembly. So the goal is we, as people want to become more involved and take action together, we're just trying to create space for volunteers to decide, we want to make a difference. We want to learn about equitable development. How do we create equitable development that's inclusive or address environmental issues? So those meetings, they're all on our website on Kheprw.org. You can find it on the card or just kheprw.org. We also have book discussions the second Sunday of every month at 1 o'clock. So you're welcome to come to those. As well as we have an event later today, 3 o'clock. It's about the nature of green equity. It's about basically the environment and equity and how do we create communities that are environmentally healthy for everybody. And it's going to be at Martin Luther King Center rather than our center since our AC is still broken. So MLK, it's at 38th and Illinois at 3 o'clock today. 40 West 40th Street.
And Alvin's he's in marketing, so he's doing the pitch. Great work, Alvin. I'm open for coffee or conversation on email if you want to sit down sometime and continue to have just some discussion and talking about things. Put me on your coffee list. I love to drink coffee and I love to eat. So hit me with an email, and we can work out some time just to talk. Thank you.
All right. Let's thank our guests from the Kheprw Institute. Now, if you would, let's just take a breath together. Just take a deep breath in. Let it out. And one more, breathing in. And breathing out. Spirit of life, Spirit of love, Spirit of peace. Be with us in this place. Touch our hearts. Help us to have the difficult conversations that we need to have. Help us to look unflinchingly at this country's history and learn the lessons that we need to learn. And help us to find the courage and the creativity and the compassion to find a new human-centered way of being together. Blessed be, and amen. Would you please rise and body your spirit for our closing hymn number